Okay, I forget that. I'm so comfortable with glasses. I can't do just my bare face.
Do you find yourself going like that?
Yeah, earlier. Did you see me doing this earlier?
I do that all the time too. Where I'm like, I was like, wait.
Yeah. But I'm like, okay, but it's nice. So, oh my god, I can wear those sunglasses too. My orange ones.
There you go.
Yeah.
Keep in your car.
Here we go. I've never been able to wear sunglasses. And I will not do transition glasses. Okay, that's old people glasses.
I don't like transitions. It does make you look older, though, I will say.
Yeah, honestly. Well, my friend has transition glasses, and it's so funny because when she steps inside after being outside, she's like, hold on, I have to stay here for 5 minutes, wait for it to detransition back. And I'm like, I do not have that patience. But, okay. All right. We'll get started. Welcome to the Hmong Women podcast. Today we're going to be talking about a pretty heavy topic. So if you would like to stay, feel free to stay. If you don't want to stay, then go. Be free. You have free will.
We're not holding you here.
But if you don't know, my name's Emily.
I'm Ariel.
And we are co-hosts to the Hmong Women podcast. And today we're going to be talking about something that we promised we would, which is impactful and necessary conversations. And this is one of them. So we'll be talking about politics and how that can affect your relationships with romantic partners, with families, with friends, and even working relationships. Yeah. So let's get started.
Yeah.
So I want to do a quick kind of rundown of what's happening in Washington, D.C. And the reason why I want to do that is because I want to set a precedent for how the world is running right now. And that regardless of what side of the aisle you identify with, that I think we can all agree about the importance of how policy impacts our life and other people. Again, I think that that's a statement that anyone on either side of the aisle can agree with. So what is happening in DC right now? A lot.
Well, just to start off, we're recording this in February.
That's true.
So things may have changed.
Oh, things... Look, the fact that things have changed 150 times over in the past 3 weeks he's been there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, Ariel's right. We're recording this February 7th, February 8th. Mm-hmm. And this is set to launch in late April. Mm-hmm. So things have changed from that time and what's happening in DC. So I'm just going to do a quick rundown as of February 8th. Okay.
Yeah.
If you don't know, now you know. That's what I always say in my Instagram videos, I realize.
Now you know.
Now you know. So there's a lot happening right now. It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
It's disheartening. It's scary for me. It's enraging. But some people may not agree with that. Some people may love what's happening right now, which that's you, but whatever. So he was inaugurated January 20th, right? Mm-hmm. On that day, can you guess how many executive orders he signed in? 26.
Oh, I was close.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, 26 on the first day. He got busy first day of class. Mm-hmm. Okay. He planned to reduce the federal workforce employees. He paused renewable energy development. So that's like the windmills that you see. And he does not like sun panels. Delayed TikTok ban, eliminated DEI federal programs. The whole Gulf of America incident. We're not even going to touch that. Pulled out from the Paris Agreement. Bad for the environment, by the way, requested a pull out of WHO, declared a national emergency at the border, froze foreign aid. He wants to only recognize 2 sexes, no genders, established DOGE with Elon Musk, that's the Department of Government Efficiency, and so much more. That's just the first day, okay? Mm-hmm. Most recently, we saw the freeze of federal funds that has now been put on pause by a judge, thank God, but that does affect a lot of federally funded programs like Head Start, Medicaid, services to U.S. veterans, because he saw that as wasteful government spending on DEI programs. Closure of USAID. So that is humanitarian aid and developmental aid for foreign countries, which we promised that we would do. And as of February 7th, the USAID building has had its letters removed off the building. Mm-hmm. Fucked up.
Well, and I figured out the other day, too, through an article that his daughter used to be involved in that, which is interesting.
Yeah.
She used to advocate for it.
Yeah. Well, that's because her mother was an immigrant. But hey, that's not important, right? Not me, but them.
Exactly.
ICE raids happening all over the place. sadly and unfortunately. Threats to Canada and Mexico with the increase in tariffs. He's the first president, I don't know if you know this, to set up a faith office.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So much for the separation of church and state. But what hasn't happened is the question, you know, right? Like, what has not happened out of Washington, D.C.? What has not happened is funding to childcare programs, a universal basic income, elimination of student loans. We got more important things to do, and apparently he's like, no, I'm going to take everyone.
Universal healthcare.
Yeah. So I'll admit I did need a break, and I did take one last Sunday. I did not touch my phone at all. I like had my phone face down on my desk while I like cleaned and I did whatever. So I hope you were able to take a break, and the viewers too. But how did you, I guess, just in the middle of all this, right? It's important to stay informed, but how did you take care of yourself in the middle of all of this?
I think really just remaining off of all platforms, because I think when you constantly see bad news headlines and you see the TikTok videos, it does get overwhelming and frustrating.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest part was just taking some time off and then being able to, like you said, shut off my phone. So
yeah. And it's really important to take care of yourself in a time of chaos too. That's what they want to do, is make you feel like there's just so much helplessness in the world. But I think as individuals, we have so much power to build community and do exactly opposite of what they don't want us to do, which is like love each other and like help each other. And that may sound hypocritical coming from me, because I'm like, fuck 45 supporters. Like, you get the day you voted for. But at the end of the day, I'm still going to treat you like a human being. I'm not going to let you die in a ditch. I'm going to help you get your car out. And I honestly don't know if I can say the same about them. But that's the practice of radical empathy, right? So I hope you are all taking care of yourselves. Yeah. So there's a lot that's happening, and right, this obviously impacts how we build relationships with people, because my belief is that who you vote for does reflect your values. And we've talked about this in previous episodes, where values are important in how we build relationships. Like, do we have the same values as the person that we are romantically involved with, friends with, whatever? So is it important for you, Ariel, to have someone who has the same political views as you?
Romantically?
Yes,
because now I've seen both sides of the spectrum, where I can officially say I used to be with someone who had the opposite. And it did create a lot of turmoil. It created a lot of, I wouldn't say arguments, but like disagreements, just ethically too. And I realized too now that we just did not see eye to eye on multiple things, whether it was women's rights, whether it was like just everything, trans people, other people's rights, our own identities. I think the person that I was with a couple of years ago, he was like a pro-Trump supporter. And I think the scariest thing for me was realizing that this man literally does not support my identity. This man is working against my own identity as a female, as an Asian person, as a Hmong person. He doesn't know how much harm it's cost me and how much harm he's doing by spreading misinformation. So I think that's one of the scariest situations I've been in, is like realizing that this person is not supporting you. They're actually working against you. But now I feel like I'm in a situation where my boyfriend right now, he's very supportive, but he's like in the middle. So it's not like he's far right or far left. He's more of like, why can't we just all agree and live together?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very interesting to see it play out romantically. So
yeah. I wish we could all be at that point in our society where we're like, can we all disagree? And unfortunately, like, we just haven't been able to build it to that point, sadly. But yeah, I agree with you. I don't think that I could be with someone who has like such stark differences in beliefs politically, because again, I think it reflects your values, like you perfectly stated, right? Do you believe that women have the right reproductive rights to their own body? Do you believe that they have bodily autonomy? Do you believe that people of color are less than white people, or other ethnicities are less than you? Because trust me, I know a lot of Hmong Trump supporters who believe that black people, Mexican people, any other people are less than them other than white people. Like, why are you equating yourself to white people, first of all? And so I could not be with a partner who doesn't see my own parents who were immigrants as people who came here. They came here and they became naturalized. Or like, I don't know if you're going to protect your daughter. If something happens to her, are you going to blame it on her? Are you going to teach your son to be a good person because of the beliefs that you have? Because based on 45, he's a convicted felon. I do not want that man anywhere near a child.
Yeah.
And so I just think that like, yeah, I couldn't be with someone like that because I don't know if they would treat other people like human, like baseline. I am very bitter about like people who tout Christianity, but then they don't follow through with Christian values of like loving thy neighbor and like caring for the poor. And it's like they nitpick what is inclusive in Christian values. And I just couldn't be with somebody like that.
Yeah, I was watching a TikTok the other day where she was like, why do my Christian neighbors want people to be deported and separated from families? So it's sort of like that. It's sort of like if you're pro-life, then why not be pro-family too, you know? So little things like that do come into all this.
Yeah, well, that's another great thing, right? Pro-life, where it's like, no, you need to keep your baby, but then you're not looking at investing in programs that help keep them, right? Accessible food, accessible water, accessible housing, childcare. Like, are you really then pro-life, or are you just pro people giving birth? Because I can tell you it costs a lot to keep a child alive. Yeah. And like diapers are expensive, formula is expensive.
Well, that's why you and I don't have kids yet.
Oh, me ever, you yet. Which is interesting. Okay, side note. It's so funny. I had this conversation with a friend of mine like a year ago because I was telling her, I was like, I don't ever want kids. Like, that's not what I imagined for myself. And but then I sat there for a little bit. I was like, oh my God, but you know who is having kids? The crazy people. They're going to have more kids than the non-crazy people. I was like, damn, then should I have kids? And that's been a conversation recently online of like, there's so many, what's the term? Pronatalists.
Oh, yeah.
Who are very conservative, who like are like, we want to have children to like fill the world because our liberal counterparts are not having children. And that's fine because then we can just raise our children to believe what we believe. But I'm like, oh my God, that's scary. Like maybe we should have children, you know, like that.
Well, I feel like long-term wise too, people do convert a lot because you do get people on the red side converting to blues. Oh, yeah. So just because you grew up that way doesn't mean you're going to stay that way.
Oh yeah, definitely. So, well, that's the thing is like how many people who grew up, like I'm just using like, what's that church? The Mormon church in like Utah.
FLDS.
Yes. Like because I watched all those shows.
Me
like,
too.
Yeah. Of like people who convert because they're like, I grew up in this and it's like a cult. And like, so I have hope that like, yeah, they're giving birth to a lot of kids, but like who's to say the kid's going to remain that way? You know? But still, it is still scary to think that like, oh my gosh, they are having children and we're not. What? But yeah, I think that who you vote for really does like reflect like how you view people. And I love everyone going around online right now. They're like, well, we hope you have the day that you voted for. I really do hope you have the day you voted for.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are finding out right now. So there was a CNN special of a reporter who went to a small town in Appalachia.
Where's that?
East Coast, like Virginia, West Virginia, North Carolina, the Appalachia.
Oh.
Yeah. And they went to school, and that town was like 70% Trump supporters. And a lot of the teachers there also voted for him. But they are also 80% poverty. And so when they found out that the federal funding was freeze was happening, which cut school lunches, funding for that, the teachers were like, I just didn't expect it to happen this way. I voted for him because I wanted him to make America great again. I wanted him to protect us and put America first. But now our children who probably don't even eat dinner when they go home because there's no food, and on Fridays they wait for food on Monday at school to come around, like now we might see a cut in that, and like we can't provide our teachers with the materials they need. And it's like that's the future you voted for though when you voted for him. And when I watched that CNN special, I'm just like, what did they expect? But I mean, he said it out loud, and Musk has said it out loud that they love the uneducated because then they can twist and turn them in any way they would like. And that's really unfortunate. And I know these people are not truly uneducated, but they choose to be uneducated. And that's just really disappointing.
That's really weird because I saw a similar news story, but in Texas, I think. And it was a teacher. And they asked her right before I think he went to office, like, oh, you're hoping he's going to, make America great again, but what is he going to do for your school? She's like, I'm not too sure, but like, I'm sure he's going to help us be great again. And I voted for him for a reason. And then it's so sad, but it's like a 2-minute segment and it switched. Trump has come into office and defunded things, and then it switches back to her and her like optimism of like, yeah, I just hope he does things right. It's like, it was horrible. I was like, this is a bad segment. Y'all did that woman dirty.
Honestly.
But she voted for him.
Exactly.
So.
But it's like, it just shows like how much they really did not think about it. Yeah. At the end of the day, like, are there policies that Kamala and Walz had that I did not agree? Yes, we have the right and the right to our opinion of not agreeing with their policies. But at the end of the day, they are not inhumane. Like, their policies did not say that transgender people were not people. Their policies did not deport hundreds and hundreds of citizens or undocumented immigrants simply because they were undocumented. They didn't seek to end birthright citizenship. Like, humanity versus that. And it's just really disappointing.
Yeah, I think it really is disappointing because I think the biggest thing that I always tell people is that I don't have to know someone who's undocumented in order to not want them deported. Exactly. I don't have to know someone who's trans to care about trans issues. Like, I think sometimes it's back to the individualism part, right?
Yep.
Of like understanding that, like, even if you're not affected, it affects other people. And sometimes I do wish we cared a little bit more about our neighbors. Like, if we all were more empathetic and understanding of other people's needs and wants, like, I feel like we'd be a lot happier, to be honest.
Yeah.
And we'd be a more caring society.
I 100% agree.
So.
And there's this great photo that one of the influencers that I follow on Instagram posted. It's like, I don't know how to make you care about other people.
Yeah.
And it's true. How do we make these people care about other people? And like you said, right, it's this culture that we've cultivated in America of like me first.
Yeah.
Instead of, okay, me and other people also coexist. How does this affect all of us? So.
And this may be a good transition to friends, right? So I think over the past couple of years, I've slowly been, even before the elections, I tend to stick around people who share the same values as me anyway. So I want to say I don't really have any Republican friends anymore. And like, I don't know if that's a personal choice. I don't know if that's just because naturally things went down that way, but I just think it's interesting,
It is interesting. Yeah. And I agree with you. I don't have like any like hard right friends. I do have some friends who are moderate. And that's great. And again, it goes down to our values of like, do we believe that people deserve to be treated like people? And I found that a lot of the people that were in my circle who were far right did not believe that.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with not being friends with that. I know some people are going to put in the comments like, oh, now it's just an echo chamber. You're not like challenging yourself. But I challenge myself every day by looking at a new headline that has to do with these people. And, there is one person that I'm not friends with. It's sad. But like when Elizabeth Coney Barrett was appointed to Supreme Court by Trump in his first term. Like,
is she that
she's
racist
the
white woman?
She's in the Supreme Court. Not Kristi Noem from North Dakota.
Oh, no, not her then. Okay, I know her.
But she was like, she's very much against abortion and like bodily autonomy. And I just remember making a post in like 2021. I'm like, she should not be appointed because she will not agree with the women's right to choose. And the person responded to me with a laughing emoji and was like, you're crazy. Like, abortion is horrible. Like, whoever, like, people who abort like should go to jail. And I'm like, that's horrible for you to say, first of all. So I'm no longer friends with them and like I'm fine with that. But it's like the fact that they saw a person who seeks abortion services as like less than and deserving of punishment like that, like, I don't understand that. And I never will. And that's okay. Yeah. And that's not to say that you can't have disagreements with friends.
Oh, yeah, no.
I think it's important to have discourse and like talk about why you believe in certain things. Like, there may be some people who don't believe in universal healthcare, but they might have a good argument behind that, with good reasoning. But that's the thing is with me, I'm like, what's your reasoning behind it? If it's just, I don't think we should have universal healthcare because I don't want to pay out of pocket.
Yeah.
Like, but how are you paying out of pocket?
But see, that's the thing, right? Like, my boyfriend and I talk about that all the time, right? Is like, if my neighbor had a heart condition, I'd rather my tax dollars go towards his heart surgery than chemical warfare.
Exactly.
So things like that, where I'm just like, okay. You don't have a very strong argument, but keep talking, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and we talked about this like over text about like preventative healthcare services, right? If our taxes went to a healthcare system that helped with preventative services, it's going to prevent diabetes, heart health, high blood pressure for people, like when you invest in these preventative services. And then like the fact that like universal healthcare, people don't think about people who have like autoimmune diseases that they can't control, cancer, like so many of these cancer patients who cannot afford treatment simply because we live in a privatized healthcare system.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think I could not be friends with somebody who's far, far, far right. And like, I think, and I've said this before to you where I'm like, okay, Republican 10 years ago is very different from Trump supporters. Like, I know plenty of Republicans who are like, completely disagree with Trump, and you know that's fine. I'll be friends with you because you don't agree with him. So I think the fine line here is like, okay, I can be friends with a Republican, I cannot be friends with the Republican who supports Trump.
Yeah I agree, because I think there are huge differences too in just who they follow and who they pick and decide they like. But yeah, I think for friends, like, obviously you're always gonna have challenges, but I have too much on my plate. If I have to argue with you politically, nah, I'm good, boo.
Yeah.
You know, like, I just gotta, as you grow up, you just gotta choose your wars and battles.
Exactly.
That's not a battle I want to fight.
No, and that's actually like a perfect segue to our next question is like, do you avoid talking about politics with friends and family? Yeah, and I know for me, it's a yes and no answer. There are some people that I know, absolutely not. I'm not talking with you about anything politics because it's just going to lead into an argument. And I will admit, I might get triggered. But I'm not afraid to admit that because you know my keywords to trigger me and I know yours, and I don't want it to end up into an argument. So there are some people that I just don't talk politics with. And then there are people who I do talk politics with. I talk to you, I talk to Dochi, I talk to a couple of my other girlfriends, I talk to some of my siblings about it, but that's because we can have a conversation. And if we are disagreeing on certain policies, that's fine. We can talk about it. We have our reasonings. But I cannot talk to someone who simply goes, well, you're just wrong. You're just wrong and you're just dumb. And I know that I would get triggered too. Be like, well, you're dumb too, bitch. So it's a yes and no for me. But if anything, I don't avoid talking about it. Like, if you want to talk about it, yeah, I would love to talk about politics with you. I would love to hear, like, because I think when people say politics, I think they think like, oh, Kamala, and just talking about the candidates
and their agendas.
Yeah, but it's like, no, I think like, okay, well, let's talk about what it means to freeze federal funds. How does that affect you? Like, that's policy. How do we talk about district zoning? Like, how does that affect how schools happen and like who attends what school? I think like talking about policies like that, like that's fun because then we get to understand how our system works better. But that's me.
Yeah, I think for me, I guess it depends on our history and how close I know you. Because, like, our family friends, for example, like, I don't talk to them about politics because we just never gotten that deep and we don't have that kind of relationship.
Yeah.
But I think for family, like, I'm probably the most, like, outgoing / like, extroverted. So I talk about everything and everything. So I feel like nothing's really off the table for us. So I have had a good few, like, discussions politically with, like, my siblings and aunts. But it's not something we don't talk about. But I think in terms of friends, obviously you and I can talk about things, but yeah, it just depends on how close you are to me, right? Like, if you're an acquaintance, like, we see each other once a year, like, it's not gonna matter. But if we're like really good friends, like, yeah, I'm gonna scope you out and I'm gonna try to figure out like where your truth lies, you know? So yeah. And I
also think that like there was not an argument, but a disagreement that I had with a friend of mine where I'm like, okay, we're both getting heated. Like, how about we revisit this another time? And I think that it's important to be able to do that too with your friends if you have disagreements about like how policies are made and like enacted. And I want to empower people to be able to do that because I feel like at least for me, for the longest time, I felt like, no, I have to finish this argument. I have to finish this disagreement. I have to get out what I want to say. But I've really learned to say, okay, we're both getting heated right now. And like, we are both just passionate about how to help people. Let's take a step back. Let's revisit it another time. And that's helped with maintaining that friendship moving forward too. So much. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really important to say, because sometimes you feel like you do have to finish it and you sort of, quote unquote, have to win, right?
Yeah.
So it's important to take that breather and take that space.
Yeah, for sure. And for anyone out there who like wonders like, well, what about if I need to cut them off? Because I think that's a topic too of like, I will say I personally made a post on Facebook because that's where a lot of people in my life who I don't know where they line politically or not are. And so I was like, if you voted for him, like, cut me off. Like, unfriend me. Don't talk. I'm not here to argue. I don't want to talk. I don't even want to disagree. Like, it's just not worth my time if you don't see just how crazy it is. Just cut me off. And I don't care if you call me over dramatic, but like, I do not want to go through another 4 years of this. And so I personally have been like, if you want to cut me off, that's fine. I'm not going to do it. You're going to put in that work because you also put in that vote. And so the question is like, well, what if we need to cut somebody off because they are a Trump supporter and they are just toxic to me? I think that you need to evaluate what that does for you. Like, there are people in my life who did vote for him. I didn't completely cut them off. They also didn't completely cut me off. We just don't talk about politics. And I make sure that, you know, we have a respectful relationship. And every moment I get, I will make it known that I disagree. But I have not completely cut them off. But what about folks who like identify as a identity that these people completely disagree with or like have been harmed? I think that at that point, like, you decide, do you want to cut them off? And if you do, to protect yourself, then do it. Yeah.
Because, I think there's a hard line between having differences in mindset and differences in ideology versus like the complete opposite of you, right? Of like, for example, my family massage therapist, you know, like we have similar values, but the only thing is that she likes Trump and I don't. So it's like, it's a very gray space that you do have to learn how to navigate, unfortunately.
Yeah, and that's a great way of putting it in visualization. Like, I did a horrible job of explaining that, but you did it perfectly.
You did it.
But yeah, I just think that like, if you've been harmed, and you're like, I don't feel safe, then like, do what you need to do to protect yourself.
And I like what you brought up about saying like, do you feel endangered? Because that's actually, it brought up one of the memories that I was just thinking about of where like one of my ex-best friends, she used to like not want to get vaxxed, for example. So she was like anti-vax. Yeah, and I was like, you know, COVID-19 is here. And like, see, that's not a political thing, but it's like a fundamental belief, right?
Yeah.
Of like, maybe I just want to keep myself and the people around me healthy.
Yeah.
And so that was a huge problem or a big hurdle that we had to go through in our friendship, is like literally understanding that like, just because you don't want it doesn't mean it won't impact others. And so you have to learn how to think about others around you if you want to spend time with them. Yeah. So I do bring that up because I feel like a lot of times when people lean right, it's because of their inability to think about others until they're affected and impacted. So
and that's valid. Like, the whole, and the thing is like, there are things where we're like, why is this a political topic? Like vaccines and like overall health, like why is it political? But that's because they've made it political. And like talking about like the COVID-19 vaccine, but even like, I know for some time, like people were like, I'm not going to get the measles shot. You should, because your child will die. Do you want to die? And it's like, it's so important to understand the difference between just overall health and then what is political. And if health is political to you, that's a problem. So, and they've made it political, unfortunately. So, and to jump off that situation too, like in that certain moment when we were having like tension, we both stepped away from that friendship for a little bit because we both needed to decompress. So it's completely normal. Definitely. Again, disagreements can happen. And I have that here as like disagreement versus arguments, right? And I think it's hypocritical to say here that people cannot have their own opinions. You can have your own opinions. First Amendment, freedom of fucking speech and thought, okay? The problem comes when your opinions become personal attacks and it actually leads to harm of people.
Yeah.
Like, that's when the problem comes. And that's what I feel like so many people in my experience that I've experienced who are far right are like, what's my freedom of speech? Like, and they say some like slur and they say something really harmful that leads to like harm. And it's like, well, it's my freedom of speech you're infringing on. No, you can have your opinion, but if it leads to personal attacks and harms, that's the fucking issue. And so that's where I say like disagreement versus argument. Like, I can disagree with you, but if your point of views are endanger people, then you're the fucking problem.
Yeah, definitely.
I guess, like, has politics always been an important factor in your life and how you make decisions? Like, how has it guided how you navigate who you let into your life before versus now? Because I know you say in the recent years matters a little bit more, but has it also always mattered to you?
Our politics haven't always been this crazy. So I feel like having all this new stuff flood in, I feel like it's appropriate to like re-examine yourself and be like, yeah, maybe I should start judging people and filtering people in and out of my life. So I feel like it's more necessary now. But I would say if you gave me like 6-8 years ago, I would be like, nah, it's fine, you know, because I feel like it wasn't as insane as it is now. And for me, I don't, like we talked about, like if you're a pro-Trump supporter, I just probably won't be close to you because I know that we can coexist, but it does play a huge impact in relationships. So right now, present day, it would be a big factor for me on if I decide to be your close friend or not. So
yeah. And has, like, does what's happening right now affect like decisions you make moving forward, like where you shop or what you do and how you interact with people in general?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, one really good example is I was talking to my therapist and I was telling her, you know, for the first time in my life applying for jobs, they give you 2 questions: what's your race and what's your gender? And for the first time, I actually put down, I just do not want to identify with anything. And I think little moments like that is where you really have to you have to be genuinely aware of like, wow, like, do I really want to work for a company like this? Do I want to be supporting, you know, companies with my work and where my money goes? So just being a lot more internally aware of where you're putting yourself, where you're putting your work, and the ethics of that company.
Yeah, no, and that I'm going to sidetrack a little bit here because part of this conversation too is like, how do you navigate working relationships that have political turmoil as well? You know, I am fortunate to work in a place where we can be friendly with each other about our politics, and like nobody has outright said they're a Trump supporter or a Kamala supporter, but we all have sat down and been like, what's happening right now is crazy and let's just all be empathetic towards each other. And like, I'm fortunate to have that, but there are other people who aren't. Like, there's someone in my life right now whose office like put up a Trump picture and they were like gloating about it, and then when they brought it up to the supervisor was like, well, it's their right. And totally ignoring the fact that they have people of color who work there who have expressed that they were uncomfortable. And so I texted back and I was like, petty me, I would have put up a photo of Kamala.
That's what I was thinking. And put like little blue flags around the place. Yeah.
And like, or like even like to make them even more mad, Bernie.
Yeah.
You know, and like but that's me. But then they made a really good point because I was seeing red at that point. But they're like, no, but I think my safety matters because I don't know what they'll do to me.
Yeah.
And that makes sense. And so luckily they had an HR department who was like, yeah, no, take that shit down.
That's
like
good.
There should be no political affiliation of any kind in this workplace, whether you lean right or left. And so I'm glad that HR like stepped in and supported that. But like, I know that I would hate to be on projects with those coworkers. I know that I would try to avoid those coworkers at all costs. If it needs to be professional and we need to work on a project together, fine. We're not going to talk about anything but the work. And don't expect me to be overly friendly with you. Don't expect me to go out of my way to help you. I'm just here to do my job. So yeah, if you face any coworkers like that, know that you don't have to put in the extra effort to be the better person. Yeah. Have you ever had anything like that at any of your work situations?
No, because I tend to just ignore people when they start talking about politics. I'm dead serious.
I love that.
Like, I have been in situations, especially in corporate, where like people are chit-chatting and it's like, oh yeah, you know, get ready to vote next week, or like, oh yeah, what do you think about this political matter? And like, to me, back then I was young, right? So I was like, meh. Or better yet, like, if they said something that offended me, I would just take it to HR. So honestly, for me, like, it's not that I'm not straightforward, but like in a professional setting, I'm gonna leave it at HR, you know, and be like, this made me really uncomfortable. You need to take care of this.
Yeah.
And you need to talk to them. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess I'm just not very confrontational in the workplace.
Yeah.
But I definitely don't engage in any political conversations there.
So now I'm back on track with the question, which is like, has politics been an important factor in my life and how I make decisions? Like, always. They always have been. And I think I would say, like, I was radicalized from a pretty young age. Just seeing like how my parents were treated when we were living in a predominantly white town, how my brothers were treated. And then there was a campaign that happened in my early teens. It's the Say No campaign to the amendment on gay marriage that happened here in Minnesota. They wanted to change the amendment to say that, you know, same-sex marriage was illegal. And I'm like, what the fuck? That makes no goddamn sense. People can marry whoever the fuck they want to marry. They want to marry a car, they marry a car.
Yeah.
And so I remember participating in that campaign, and one of the volunteers was like, how old are you? And I was like, oh, I'm 13. They're like, you need parental permission to be here. And so then they got, I was too afraid to call my parents. And so I called my older sister. I was like, can you say that I'm okay to be here? And so she's like, yeah, that's fine, whatever. And so then they let me sit there and like do like whatever volunteer work I could as a 13-year-old.
Oh.
And like, yeah, so like politics has always been a part of my life because it affects, I think people don't realize just how it affects them. I think they look at it from a federal level only, but like local elections affect us too, right? How districts are zoned and like how that affects you, and if you have kids, like where they go to school, parking zones. When we talk about like city policy, right? Your city councilman like takes care of that, like the budget to your city, how roads get fixed, and stuff like that. So like they don't realize that like local level policies and politics also affect you. And like I feel like a lot of times people forget that. And it's like who you vote for county commissioner, because the county commissioner runs that county and its budgets and its doings. And like a district judge, like they're the ones that tells you whether or not a law in that district is correct or not. And so it's like, I think it's so important for people to feel empowered to also know like local elections and politics affect you. Like that's the closest level of policy to us as US citizens.
Yeah.
And I think that it's important for people to feel empowered to be able to go and figure out, how does city policy affect me? And should I then care about policy? And again, this is my personal opinion that I think you should, because it affects how you live your life. It affects like how much money you can make, where money goes to. And like for homeowners, like property taxes and stuff like that, like these are all determined by policy. And moving forward, like I think that you should pay a little more attention so it's always been a part of my life. And I think for a while my family thought that I was over dramatic because I'm like, the fucking government is like conspiring against us. Well, guess what? It really is now. Yeah. So guess who's crazy? Y'all. So yeah, I think it does guide where I go and I spend my money. It does guide who I let into my life. And some people may say that that's so hypocritical of me, but I'm okay with taking that. Because I don't want, again, we've said this multiple times, I don't want to let someone in my life who will immediately turn their back on me because they think that that's to their benefit. Yeah.
I think, like, since we come from refugee families, right, our parents immigrated here, I think very naturally a lot of us have that awareness, right, of, like, and the way we were raised of, like, always thinking about others and always just being aware of our surroundings. And so I think even though politics like didn't come to me until maybe I wouldn't say high school, college times, I do feel like because we come from a more empathetic background and a more like communal background, that's really been a value that has pushed us, to where we are now. And so bouncing off of that, I would say like the first real moment where I realized like we lived in a really fucked up society and like our dollars need to be going towards something significant is probably when I was in my bachelor's program and I was in the healthcare systems, healthcare like management services course. And I was just reading a story. They made us read a story and I think write an essay about a man who couldn't afford like cancer care for his wife, who ended up dying anyway. And then he ended up racking the debt onto his name. So I was like, that was a real first moment for me where I was like, like, that's really unfair. And that brought me down the path to understanding like how our systems work, how they're working against us, and better yet, how they're a for-profit system, right? Whether you want to look at the job market or, you know, any sort of system in the United States. And so for me, politics have not really been top of my mind, and I guess I am sort of privileged to think about that. But it's become more prevalent now, especially with people's rights being taken away, separation of families, and whole identities being erased. So sadly, like, this was the first election that I actually, you know, voted, because I'm sort of opposite of you. Like, I didn't really surround myself with the social work and the social politics of everything and just politics overall. But I think as we grow older, like, it's sort of our responsibility to sort of step up and be like, okay, well, you know, we have to understand that these laws and these things coming into our world and coming into place, like, we really do have to advocate for ourselves and for our neighbors. So I feel like I have a later start to it, but later's never been better.
Yeah, and I think that it's like perfect segue into our radical empathy, right? I think so many, what I've seen, and it's really unfortunate, and this is my opinion, is that when people have turned around and they've learned or they participate more, people are like, well, why didn't you do it earlier? Like, why are you waiting so long? But it's like, well, they're here now. Like, they're where we are, and let's open our arms and let's help each other. And I think that that's why I love like the practice of radical empathy. If for those who don't know what it is, it was coined by Terry Givens in 2020 after George Floyd, and the need and want for like radical empathy, which is a concept that involves trying to understand and share the feelings of others without judgment, trying to understand where they come from, why they believe the things that they do, and understanding the origins of their biases, and then working together to like come to an understanding, come to a compromise, and like uplift each other. So that's the practice of radical empathy. Then to offset that is also radical accountability. Right? It's like, okay, we can have radical empathy, but as human beings, we also need to be accountable for our own actions. And what is radical accountability? That is the practice of taking responsibility for your own actions, thoughts, and feelings, and more importantly, the outcomes that they produce. So if you went around, for her radical accountability was that apology, right? Knowing, I fucked up. I called the cops on him when he wasn't chasing me. I fucked up by believing this and letting my own biases take over. So now, what are the outcomes of that? He got racially profiled. Now, an additional action following is I need to work on my own biases actively. And so I think that people also need to practice radical accountability. Yeah.
I agree.
That was a lot. I'm sorry.
Everything you said. I don't really have much to add to that.
Yeah. I just think it's so unfortunate. Like, yeah, you know, there are people in my life who said like politics wasn't important to me. I never judged them for that. I never judged you for that, by the way. I want you to know that in case I came off too strong.
Oh no,
previously,
I
but
never
like
feel judged.
And I think what people tend to do is they don't practice that empathy, where they're like, well, fuck you. If you don't care about politics, I don't care about you either. But it's like, well, let's extend it a little bit beyond that. Let's practice a little bit of kindness, and maybe they'll come around. And a lot of times they do, and they come around in their own way, where they're like, yeah, you know what? Politics may not have been a big part of my identity, but I understand that we need to treat each other with kindness. And that's what I want people to realize is like, let's all take a little minute and practice radical empathy and radical accountability. Because we know the latter is not being held anywhere in Washington, D.C. Actually, either of those. So that's my little spiel on radical empathy and accountability.
Yeah, I saw that echoing what you said too, is like, just freaking educate yourself. But the other part of it too is like extending grace to that person and not canceling and making that someone's focal point for the rest of their life, right? Because people change. Like, just because, you know, just for example, if you switch to the right to the left, you know, that's a big change, and you wouldn't want someone judging you for that. So I do like how you brought that up, like radical acceptance and radical accountability. So
Yeah. Well, and there was this really great video. I think I'm trying to remember which news outlet it was, but he was talking about how he was like a far right believer. He was like, he got to the point where like he even had like, what is that? The swastika tattooed on him. So he was like far radical right, like extremist. And then he was saying that one day, I forget what the incident was that like essentially like changed his attitude towards like liberal views. He was like, I won't say that I'm a liberal, I think I'm more moderate now, but he got rid of the swastika tattoo, and he was like, I just think that like extremist far right radical views like that don't align with me anymore, because now I understand like people are people. And like word for word, that's what he was like, people are people, and like they live their lives and they're good people, and people can change. And if we still held him to the same standards that he had before, like we are then regressing ourselves. And so I think, yeah, you made a good point, like accept and give grace, and like try to practice that, because like I'm coming from a fear base, but I'm like, I don't want them to go back to that. I don't want them to go back to being crazies, you know? And like if we can prevent more people from being like that by extending that grace, like let's do it. Yeah. I guess what piece of advice would you give to people who are worried about navigating these kind of political conversations in any situation? What would be an overall piece of advice you would give?
Yeah, I think for me, it's just, I always ask myself when people start rambling, like, is this a battle I really want to fight? So I think asking yourself if you really want to get into that conversation first is a good first question for yourself. And I think the second thing too would be like just remaining kind, because I think with all the new changes and, you know, the new administration and what's been happening recently, I do think that like they are trying to turn people against each other. But I think if we held more grace and we were more compassionate and we were able to be a little bit more empathetic and understanding, we'd be better off if everyone did like 1% of that. So
I love that.
Yeah.
And I guess to apply it to Hmong people, because I know there's a lot of us who did vote for Trump. And I say us because like I didn't vote for him. Okay, I'm saying us to like encompass us as a group. But like, how would you say like for people who are like, well, I have a cousin or an uncle or an aunt who like are true Trump believers, like how do I navigate that Hmong relationship? Because like you said, we are a very communal community culture, and it's interesting that they voted for him because he's very individualistic and very capitalistic and very like me. So what advice would you give to folks who are like, how do I navigate my Hmong family relationships then?
I think that's a hard question, because if it's someone that you really love, like you would hope you see eye to eye on things and you would hope that you guys have the similar values, but everyone has differences, you know? And so it's going to be on you to see if you can accept that of someone, and if not, take the distance and the space to grieve that relationship or to move on, because not everyone in your life is supposed to stay, you know? And I think another key part too is that I personally do not align with Hmong folks who have voted for Trump, because I think when you're voting for someone who's that evil and that hateful and someone who has that bad of a spray tan, like sometimes like I don't think you really recognize your own identity, and that scares me, because if you really understood where we come from as, you know, a community, and where your mom and your dad and your grandma and grandpa came from, you'd realize that you do see parts of your identity in the people who are suffering. So I think we lack a lot of empathy. We lack a lot of, you know, awareness and consciousness of where we come from. So I feel like if people were to wake up and really realize that, oh shit, maybe this is a small reflection of what could happen to us, I think you'd wake the fuck up and be like, we might be next. And yeah, another point I do want to make is that like COVID-19, don't forget about that, folks. Do you remember how Asian people were treated? Like just because you want to be white doesn't mean you'll actually be white in other people's eyes. So remember where you came from.
My piece of advice for you would be like, if you don't want to engage, you don't have the energy to engage, don't. I have the energy, so I engage.
See, and I sort of just don't sometimes. Yeah. I'm just like, that's them, you know.
Exactly. Oh, well. So like if you have the energy, do it. But if you don't, then don't. You know, like know your limitations, and like sometimes if you know that they just want to do to trigger you, then don't engage. You know, because I know people like that, and just don't engage. But also I just, you know, I want to say that like I have it written here. It's really mean, but
just say it.
I'm like, if they are citing things where they're like, well, Fox News said this and I read this on this report, I'm like, tell them to read it again, because they will not understand anyways. Like, they don't have anything pacific. Like, you can tell them to read and look as much as they want, but the thing is, they have already trouble comprehending. So even if you ask them to read it again, they're not going to understand. So take the time and energy to figure out what you want to do with that. Like, if you don't want to engage, don't engage, because at the end of the day, they're either choosing to willingly not understand, or they really don't understand. And they cannot be educated at that point. So yeah, I think take your time. Here's the thing is, I'm like, I also think that what's happening right now too is like, we're becoming like them, but a liberal version, where we're like, well, we're not going to extend empathy. And we think that what we're doing is like the opposite of what they're doing. But actually, it's just a mirror of like, okay, we're just going to cut them out completely. I think let's not mirror that, and do as Ariel said, let's practice some empathy and kindness, and let's do the opposite of what they're doing, not a mirror of what they're doing.
I love that.
So this is our talk on politics and relationships and how it's built into your life. Again, in the current climate that we're in, I think it's really important for us to kind of open this door, and just know that if you come online and you have some dumb ass thing to say, delete, block, because again, the things that you say and the outcomes that come from those is important. So if you enjoyed this conversation, if you want to share your point of view, if you want to share some advice, feel free to drop that in the comments. Let's be kind. Let's share some empathy. And let's move forward together as a community. And when I say community, subscribe to us. It's free. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We're now on Blue Sky. Woo woo. And we're still on TikTok if you still have TikTok. And come join us. Come join us as we talk about things that are important to us as people, to our community. And we really just want to thank you for tuning in and listening today.
Yeah.
All right. See y'all next time.
Bye.